Part 2. An Inside Job. How to partner with focus. Your power is not measured by how many opportunities you can get. Your power is measured by what you have the ability to turn down. You have so much power that the opportunity doesn't make sense to you. Julian Mitchell, The Business Behind Music and Culture with John Henry. My dad left when I was very young. No doubt in part because both my parents were also very young. As a career-driven new adult, my father told me later that he wanted to establish himself first to provide properly for my mom and me. In retrospect, a very 22-year-old idea to believe. Of course, time waits for no man. My parents never reconciled, however cordial they remain. When I became a young man, I met the love of my life, courted her for several years, then got married and immediately had our first son, and launched my first startup at the exact same time. I was proving to myself that I could have a robust career and a healthy relationship with my own son. When I finally got into the TED stage, it was a talk about giving people, specifically children, attention. Overlaying my current fate framework onto the past, my primary resource has almost always been focus. That's because I believe focus is love. Giving something or someone your full attention changes it. I see it in my one-on-one coaching, looking my client right in the eye and letting them know that we are on a journey together. Or holding on to one of my sons, afraid at the moment, and consciously calming my heartbeat so his will follow suit. My very ability to be highly driven, relentlessly strategic, and purposely creating and needing intense connections to others is the direct result of my trauma. These are the grooves in my vinyl record. It's taken me years to not wear it as a badge of honor, saying that pain made me, or to argue that my childhood environment has nothing to do with the way I use my resources today, plugging into some perverse, self-made man myth. Indeed, and instead, it just is. That in itself is freedom. That in itself is love. Self-love. Game plan for your focus. Number 1, show up with one goal in mind. Number 2, constantly remember your intention. And number 3, remember why you do, not just what you do. How to strengthen your focus. As soon as you wake up, number 1, write down your number 1 priority for the day. Number 2, do not immediately say yes, but politely give yourself time to consider what it requires. Number 3, think about what you want to accomplish next and the singular action that will get you closer. Boundaries for your focus. Number 1, create clear metrics on what you want. Number 2, establish early what you will or won't do to see the desired results. And number 3, check in often to make sure your idea, belief, or goal still serves you. Focus is nothing more than a decision. It is giving one solitary fuck and making that fuck your objective at a specific moment. Focus is not obsession. Obsessions are unconscious and often are rooted in the avoidance of something else. Focus is not passion. As I wrote in my book, The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur, the truth is that passion will not get you out of bed every morning. Like love, it can be fickle and moody in fair weather. And focus is not willpower. The problem is that will and resources can never be equally prioritized, Simon Sinek says in The Infinite Game. There are always circumstances in which one is pitted against the other. Focus is the act of consciously showing up at this very moment as well as you can. Being focus rich means choosing to show up again and again and again. Award-winning author Ta-Nehisi Coates explains it in this way. It's not really that mystical. You just repeat it, practice over and over again, and suddenly you become something that you didn't realize you could really be. Or you just quit the field and realize you really suck. But hopefully you have a breakthrough. But how do you define breakthrough? We can become too dependent or independent of focus when we do not define our success. It is realistically navigating the gap between where you are and where you want to be, and what concentration it will take to get there. Focusing on the process, Elizabeth Gilbert says, protects us from the extreme emotions of failure and success. She says, "My point is that I'm writing another one now, and I'll write another book after that, and another, and another, and another, and many of them will fail, and some of them will succeed. But I always will be safe from that random hurricane of outcome as long as I never forget where I rightfully live. Look, I don't know where you rightfully live, but I know that there's something in this world that you love more than you love yourself. Something worthy, by the way, so addiction and infatuation don't count, because we all know those are not safe places to live, right? The only trick is that you've got to identify the best, worthiest thing that you love most, and then build your house right on top of it and do not budge from it." There are 3 simple ways that you can make a change in the world with more focus, energy, and success, Seth Godin says in the practice. First, you can embrace the fact that you can, in fact, trust the process and repeat the practice often enough to get unstuck. Second, you can focus on the few, not everyone. And third, you can bring your intention to your work, making every step along the way count. When my clients say, "I'm having a hard time focusing on this thing I really want," it really means that they have at least one of 3 factors. Number 1, vague metrics of what they want. Number 2, hidden assumptions about what they will or won't do to see the desired results. And lastly, number 3, holding on to an idea, belief, or goal that no longer serves them. Ironically, it is also the very same factors when clients say, "I'm having a hard time letting this failing project go." Again, it is a trend I've seen with folks, having a surplus or a deficit of a particular resource. They can be in opposite situations with the same exact challenge. First, what is the result you want? If you're looking to get full, then it doesn't matter about the quality or the health or the sustainability of the food. If you're looking to have a gourmet experience, then it may not matter how much it costs or how long you have to wait to get the opportunity. We expect to do getting full effort and unconsciously expect a gourmet experience results. If you're focus rich, then you could be barking up the wrong tree and becoming increasingly frustrated with the progress. If you're a focus challenge, then you can break your focus quickly because you're expecting better results sooner. Partnering with focus means putting perfection on the shelf. Perfect is an ideal, not a goal. I explain why in my 2018 TEDx Toledo talk, why you should strive for good enough. Emotional intelligence pioneer Brené Brown said perfectionism is armor. It is different than an internal metric or standard that we have, as in I'll be better tomorrow than I am today. That's good. That's growth. That's the way it's supposed to be. No, when you get into the perfectionist mindset, it has nothing to do with the internal. It has to do all with the external. And everything you do comes down to the same basic question. But what will they think? Capital T and they. Perfectionism, Brené Brown says, is our way of hiding our true selves. You can't focus on being perfect because it doesn't exist. That's why striving for perfection remains good for only one thing: burnout. Knowing what you want, though, is entirely different. It is tuning out the noise and stating your intention as clearly and plainly as possible. To contrast, agility is utilizing and maximizing whatever is in front of you. Focus is removing and minimizing non-essential things around you. It is taking a magnifying glass and concentrating the sunlight, your attention, on a specific spot. The sun could have been beating that same spot all day, but now that concentration is organized, uniform, and exclusionary. It is easy to forget that you, the chair that you sit in, and every single thing around you is made up of molecules. And even the most solid objects are constantly vibrating, however slowly. The higher the heat, the faster the molecules move. Our concentrated attention adds more heat. Focus creates flexibility in an otherwise immobile situation. To focus, we have to be able to be still while others move. In stillness, we see the true, deeper dimensions of a situation. Only in focus, in stillness, and in singularity can we see the multitude of cadences around us. Second, what will or won't you do to see your desired results? As Seth Godin says in The Dip, write down under what circumstances you're willing to quit. I launched my first startup, So Quotable, at the same time I became the primary caretaker of my 3-month-old, Alec. He was my priority. If bootstrapping my first company ever prevented me from feeding, caring, or otherwise guiding Alec, then I would quit. No questions asked. Financial sacrifices, mental stress, an intense daily routine left me undeterred, as I could wake up every morning and ask, am I doing right by Alec, and by extension, by my family, and confidently say yes. We don't always have these conversations about expectations and sacrifice, probably because we don't think about it until we have to. Scarcity breeds clarity, is why we suddenly become specific towards end of life, become efficient when we have to take care of our children or our elders, or become financially thoughtful when we get our first paycheck. The truth is that we always have these leaks, these minor incongruencies that eat at our focus, our agility, our time, or our energy, that become major misalignments as we continue on. Big life moments don't create the disparity, they just expose the issues we've had all along. The late Stephen Covey's classic First Thing First has my favorite focus framework. The premise is simple. Your life has big rocks and little rocks. The size represents the importance and essentially what should be prioritized. They all have to fit in a jar. Pour the little rocks in first, you can get them all in the jar, but you won't be able to fit your big rocks in. Put the big rocks in first, though, and then the little rocks will naturally fall into the remaining space allotted. Your rocks will evolve over time. My kids don't need me as much now. Alec was my big rock, and my fledgling startups, So Quotable and Cuddler, had to be squeezed within the space between. Today, Alec and his younger brother, Abi, are old enough to be more independent. I have the space to do 7 books in 4 years, build a healthy coaching practice, and do way more keynote talks. The rocks changed. When I first started as an entrepreneur, a good friend said, perhaps my family was the real startup. Low resources, minimal time, and little guidance. I'll expand on these insights later when we discuss time. For now, I'll say that it helped me accept the priorities I would have to be juggled and to be realistic with what will be possible. Realizing your true priority can be tough, but when you do, you can truly maximize how effective you are at the most important thing. You can fit nearly everything in if you take care of the most important stuff first. Focus isn't just your outward actions, but what is top of mind for you. It is remembering your intention within the chaos, building connections as you rest, and working on your process to be ready for your next breakthrough. The results we desire often manifest internally before they create an external event. Poet and Andrew W. Mellon Foundation President Elizabeth Alexander talks about how we can always be actively creating, even if our output fluctuates based on the season of our lives. She says, I would often send writing students to look at the retrospective of an artist's work, and the thing that you learn is that there are fallow periods, and there are also incredibly generative periods. There are periods where you're trying to work an idea out so you're kind of stuck in a groove, and there are periods when you have breakthroughs. If you look on the walls, there will be years where there's nothing at all. And I think it's also really interesting when you learn about the lives of the artists. And I think about this with women artists in particular. Where they, had children in those years. What were their usual family forces or forces within the self? Were they in a depression? Were they struggling with their health? Or were they just, to use a fantastic expression that jazz musicians use, were they just woodshedding? Were they in the woodshed just working on their craft, biding their time, trying to work it out privately so they can come out, shazam, with something different in public? Woodshedding is building towards tomorrow based on your intention today. You're still working, and even if you're not moving, practice your instrument so you don't have to focus on the basics. Sharpen your vision so that you can focus strictly on your execution later. And most importantly, build your system so that you don't have to focus on creating or correcting sloppy mistakes when your stakes are higher. In my coaching, one of the biggest dangers I see is wishing for a future you aren't prepared for. We can be so focused on what's next, we become myopic on what we can improve and control today. You want your product featured by Oprah, but have you tightened up your manufacturing enough to handle 100x demand? It's cool to envision being a busy life coach, but have you researched and determined how many clients you can realistically serve? Manifesting a millionaire lifestyle by age 25 is fine, but how are you going to serve the world in a way where you can financially be there, and at what personal cost are you willing to pay? The late motivational speaker Jim Rohn explains it simply, as I share in The Ultimate Bite-Sized Entrepreneur. You say, if I had this big organization, I'd really run with it with a strong hand and I'd be a fabulous leader. But I only got a few followers and I don't know where they are. See, that's not going to work. If you wish to preside over a lot, you have to be disciplined when the amounts are small. What Rohn is talking about is systems. A system to master your emotional intelligence so you can handle the power. A system to handle your relationships so your management can scale. And a system to organize your resources so that you can use them most effectively in high numbers. The thing is that those systems can most easily be put into place when the overhead is low, as are the stakes. Ironically, as Rohn mentions, it's easy to not take the system seriously when the rewards are weak. Yet this is the very time you should be thinking about long-range goals. People tend to start with a business model and then they become unhappy when their days are filled with tasks they don't enjoy, Paul Jarvis says in Company of One. Instead of thinking, what product can I create or what service can I offer, Atomic Habits author James Clear believes that we should first think, what type of life do I want? And how do I want to spend my days? Then you can work backwards from there into a business model that allows you to create scalable systems to deliver your product to your audience. These systems are built around focus. For instance, Andrew W. Mellon's Elizabeth Alexander says she thought when she became a mother, her creative muse would leave. Instead, during the midnight breastfeedings, she'd envision poetic lines, scribbling them down with a spare hand. Her focus as an artist didn't die. She just evolved the system in which she created. Alexander says, once I got old enough to start realizing that for every day of my life, I would not rise with the dawn and right into the light and do that every day. And thus there would be a book every other year. It just doesn't work like that. Things happen in life. There are stages. There are eras in life. Lastly, are you holding on to an idea, belief, or goal that no longer serves you? Inertia is a hell of a drug. It is easier to keep our focus on something we've outgrown than to find a new direction. It can feel like losing our identity, even though, like skin cells refreshing every 7 years, we are in a constant state of perpetual growth, change, and evolution. It reminds me of a long-shared Thanksgiving story I first heard from my mother. I later realized that other people heard a variant of it in their lives too. It goes like this. A couple's getting ready for their Thanksgiving ham and to put it into the oven. Suddenly, one of them takes out a large knife and begins cutting off the end of the raw ham, a significant chunk of it. "What are you doing?" her partner asks. "I'm getting the ham ready to put in the oven." No. I mean, why are you cutting the end off?" "Well, that's how my mom taught me to cook it." "Why?" "Because I don't know." Now curious, she goes over to her mom's house. "Why do you cut off the end of the ham?" "Because that's how Nana does it." Now both perplexed, they go over to the retirement home to visit the grandmother. "Nana, why do you cut off the end of the ham?" The grandma pauses, then light comes on in the eyes. "Well, during our first Thanksgiving, we didn't have much money, and it was a tiny kitchen that was an even tinier oven. So the only way we can make our ham fit would be to..." Even more to the point, spiritualist Jessica Dore recently shared a New York Native American story of the ice house. A witch puts a group of men into an ice house to freeze them to death. She even included ice chairs to sit in when they inevitably get tired, pushing them ever closer to their demise. Instead, the wise man dance and sing all night. The body heat begins to melt the house, making holes in the ceiling and eventually letting the sun in. They are free. Ice houses come in many models, shapes, and sizes. Some are internal monologues that run on loop. Some are classical trainings or informal social conditionings. Some are thought patterns so subtle that you don't know that they're there until one day someone looks you in the eyes and says, "Hey, that's foolish. What are you doing on account for some assumption you never bothered to question?" door says. The ice house, she says, is, quote, any place in life where you have chosen to siphon or partition off vital energy in service of staying in the same place. Any place you've thrown up a barricade against pretty much the only truly uninterruptible thing in life, which is change. In other words, your focus isn't on growth, but your focus is on not growing. You can't hide and create at the same time. You can't be safe and improve simultaneously. You can't get there from here. The word siphon is perfect here, as you're stealing focus from potential future greatness and giving it to the past that no longer serves you or the world. Think about the last time you spent an inordinate amount of time for an incremental improvement on a completed project. Now imagine all the other things you could have done and doing with that time. At a certain point, spending more time on something will provide diminished returns significantly. That inordinate amount of time can have devastating effects on your big rocks. It's better to ship it out, get it out the door, and move on to the next task, as having the perfect little rock won't help you manage any of your big rocks, assuming you have any room left to manage your true priorities. In Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about ideas leaving when they aren't acted upon. She says, what was the idea supposed to do? Sit there around indefinitely while I ignored it? Maybe. Sometimes they do wait. Sometimes exceedingly patient ideas might wait for years or even decades for your attention, but others won't because each idea has a different nature. Would you sit around in a box for 2 years where your collaborator blew you off? Probably not. Thus, the neglected idea did what many self-respecting living entities would do in the same circumstances. It hit the road. You could be holding on to the corpse of an idea already past its time. You're focusing on an empty husk. Windows of opportunity don't always close. They do have a shelf life. What opportunities are you missing when you're focused on an expired idea? Locate your ice houses, Jessica Dora warns. You know them because they are the places where what was once supple, flexible, and teeming with life goes to do its hardening, stiffening, and waiting around to die. Now ask yourself this. What dances can I do? Will I do? What songs can I sing? Will I? In order to revive those things, in order to keep them alive. The proverbial dance is simple. Remembering the weight of a bad goal far outstrips any benefits of persistence. What should I give up is as essential of a question as what should I begin? There's a wonderful urban myth about veteran comedian Bill Murray. For years, it has been said that he'd pop up around a stranger, or no more than a few people, at a random, unassuming moment, do something just odd enough to get their attention, and then whisper, "You can tell others that Bill Murray did this, but no one would believe you." And then he'd leave as suddenly as he came. It would be a benign activity, like crashing a small public wedding happening in a park, or dropping in on a young rock band playing loud in their apartment. Many of these events reportedly happened before cell phones were common and cheap. The onlookers couldn't just snap him and capture him in a viral video. The Saturday Night Live alum was known for his straight-faced, sardonic comedy, and improvised moments always seemed to be hilarious to the people involved. But as he presumably predicted, when they'd share these funny incidents, no one else believed them. In 2018, new director Tommy Avalone made a documentary about the nationwide phenomenon, The Bill Murray Stories, Life Lessons Learned from a Mythical Man. It all turns out to be true. But what happens to people in the gap between their Bill Murray encounter on, say, a golf course in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that moment when Avalone's indie movie shows everyone else that they were telling the truth all along? They spend the time trying to convince others in their lives that it really happened. They quietly cherish the thought, like a childhood memory only you recall. Or after meeting skepticism, did they eventually convince themselves that it never happened at all? What you know to be true, what you value as a focus, could be a little fuzzy around the definition, or as clear as the sun rising in the east. Honestly, it doesn't matter. What does matter is how much you depend on someone or something else to validate your truth. The more important the change in which you seek, the more pressure you will be under to trade that truth for another person's truth. And it is never a fair trade. Your work may be seasonal, but your intention is not.